In one of my previous videos, I showed how I can write a whole publishable paper in law in about 90 minutes, not including some additional refinements that will be required, like footnotes. Since then, the technology has improved, DeepSeek emerged, Grok entered. We have now ChatGPT 4.5 that I'm starting to experiment with. The development that occurred just in a matter of weeks is incredible. So all the systems are working towards great improvement. So this leads me to the conclusion that once some minor technicalities are resolved, anybody can write the equivalent of a 10-year paper, so the best paper in a professor's career, in theory in a matter of minutes. Some people don't agree with that. We will discuss a little bit how I can bridge some of my disagreements with these people. But we are very, very close to this situation. If we are not there today, we'll be there in half a year or maybe a year, but not later than that. The question that I'm going to address in today's video is, what does this imply for academics? For hundreds of years, one of the most important role of academia was to rate scholars. Scholars have been writing for professional law reviews and presses. These presses are rated in a very strict way, and according to that, professors are accepted to teach, promoted according to the different ranks of academia, and gain prestige and power and grants and so on. What if, in all this time, the most important factor that determines that is publications. So quantity of the publications, and the quality of the journal in which they are published. The other issues like teaching and grants and administration are there, but they're usually only second rate towards determining the success of an academic career. What will become of us academics in a world in which somebody without any education or skill can produce a better paper in a fraction of the time, with no special experience or knowledge or resources? That's a question that I will try to address today. My name is Shai Dotan. I'm Associate Professor of International Public Law at the University of Copenhagen, Faculty of Law, and the purpose of this series of lectures is to improve your English and your research skills. So, the first thing I want to do is try to discuss where we are in terms of AI and what are the limitations that this technology still has. And I've discussed this a lot with friends of mine who are old professors, and I see a variety of views. So there's a lot of people that are very, very skeptical about the quality of this technology, that would basically say something like, well, it can produce the work of a bad student on a good day. Here I come and I say it can produce the work of a good professor on the best day. And then that's something that is a bit difficult to resolve. Let me try to explain why our views differ in this way. The first thing which should be obvious is that this technology developed immensely over the last 2 years. There are a lot of people that when ChatGPT first came online, played with it a little bit, got a great feeling of superiority of how stupid it was, because it made a lot of mistakes, and then just thought that they are superior to AI for the next 10 years and didn't look at it again. Others have tried a little bit later, but didn't do so regularly or with enough effort. And then you get a very, very biased picture, because the technology that we have today is not what we had 3 months ago. Again, 3 months ago, we didn't have DeepSeek and Grok. We didn't have the latest models of ChatGPT that developed very, very quickly. And the difference is just immense. It's a matter of weeks. In weeks, we have evolutions that would normally take years. So I think the main reason why people are skeptical about this technology is because they just don't know what's going on today. They think about what's going on 2 months ago, or half a year ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, when it just started, and that's just not where the technology is at. The second problem is that AI does have some problems that are still not fully resolved. So we have a very major problem of hallucinations, and they're trying to solve it. They're not doing a very good. Sometimes they improve, but not fully. So, for example, now when I use ChatGPT, all the programs now, all the big four, so ChatGPT and Grok and DeepSeek and Gemini, they give you resources that they refer to, so you can check what they're doing. They do it in quite a fair way. I find fewer and fewer clear hallucinations, so making up an article that never existed, a judgment that never existed, a fact that is clearly false. But they still exist, but they become much more refined and difficult to root out. So something that they say appears in a book but was not there, and all kinds of answers that they give you the appearance of great certainty but actually are a bit false. So my impression is these things are improved dramatically just in the last 6 months. If they continue to improve in the same pace, they're just going to be completely irrelevant. People also make mistakes, and the mistakes the computer would make would just be so much fewer compared to a human that they would be far surpassing our ability in this respect. The other issue is updated facts, or facts about particular issues that are not always available. So one of the things that I often try to do is I try to ask ChatGPT about, for example, who are prominent academics in a certain country, in a certain field, in a faculty, and it gives results that are very, very bad because the information on the internet is not good enough. So it can read all of Wikipedia and it can read everything that appears on the internet. It will not be the same level as somebody that studied in this institution, or even in the same country, or even in the same field in a different country. They would have a better sense than the machine in this respect, just because they have more information. I think that there are ways in which these things can be resolved. I see, for example, that ChatGPT is using much more, and others, I don't remember exactly which tool I used, but I start to see, wow, they're not just scanning Wikipedia. They are scanning Instagram, they're scanning Facebook, they're scanning the news, they're scanning blogs, and that's, they're covering more and more and more information that is online, and for things that require some level of being up to date, they are getting much, much better. Now, these two things together, being able to avoid an answer that seems satisfying but is false, and being updated about a lot of information that is not out there, if you combine these two things, you would reach a system that is much more commonsensical. So it would give you answers that require some level of judgment that become much better. Also, I see that some of these programs are getting a much more systematic way of answering your questions that may be a bit harder to digest, and that's why will not be always satisfying for you, but will be much less likely to be false and much more enlightening if you actually want to research a subject. So if you ask something like, which of the two scholars is more in support of judicial activism, if you ask all these tools that existed 6 months ago, you would get an answer that is basically a guess, and many times it would be plain wrong. Now, if you do it now, you will start to, if I did something similar in Grok, and you say, okay, you get tables that show you the main works of these different scholars, what is the main arguments there, how do they compare, factual details like the citations that they have on Google Scholar, and so on and so on and so on. If you read all that, if you spend the 2-3 minutes necessary to read all that, you will learn a lot about the subject, and you will get a better assessment than most human beings can provide you. Again, with the two caveats that there still cases when they're not truth-seeking but just trying to satisfy you, that's hallucination. And with the caveat that they don't have all the information that a human being would have if they know the environment. And finally, the most important reason I think people don't appreciate enough what AI can do is because they usually use products that are designed in a particular way. So ChatGPT works great and give you answers of up to 1,000 words because that's what it's designed to do. I mean, I know it from experience. I didn't read the manual or whatever it is that the company promotes, but I see how good these 1,000 words are, and I'm completely sure that if OpenAI would resolve to produce a machine that would write papers of 60 pages for the Harvard Law Review, with the technology that exists today, they would not have any problem producing a chat that would just do that. It's just that they don't want to do that. They want to produce something that will require you to ask the machine multiple times, to have a conversation with it. Maybe later there'll be commercials, I don't know. Now you also pay subscriptions. The more important thing is that they want something that would have as low a risk as possible for creating some kind of a controversy that would harm them. So if you ask them things that are potentially controversial, the machine would not go there, not because it's not smart, but because it's deliberately trying to avoid these issues. And that's what we see with a lot of these politically correct answers. So you ask about a scholar's quality, it will never say the guy is an idiot, he's a charlatan. Never, ever, ever. Even if that's maybe a correct answer, but they will never do that. And that's just something that the company I think needs, and that's why we create the product this way. So when you use a product, you're using some kind of a one-size-fits-all instrument that is not necessarily what you need to produce the product that you want, if it's a paper or a book. So I really think it's not so much of a matter of technology. Taking all these things together in my own understanding, I believe that the machines have reached what's called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, which means that it has enough knowledge, cognitive abilities, and the required common sense to be able to answer or to compete with human beings in every possible field. Even though I could see that it may not be able to write a perfect paper in law as well as the best professors that exist today, but it would do it much better than even the median professor at the top school, which means that if you go to a school like Harvard, it may not be able to compete on the best paper of the best professor. But if you take away the three issues that I mentioned before, my general understanding is it will do better than the median professors, or the one that is in the middle of the quality of the top schools in the world. And that's saying a lot. And I didn't study all these fields, so I cannot test it in all these fields. But from what I see and what I hear, it's doing that in discipline after discipline after discipline. And that for me is even more than AGI. So it means that we have a machine that will be able to write in every field. And the main advantage that it has for now is that it's just much, much, much faster than anything that a human being can ever produce. So if you look at academia, in the social sciences and humanities, you see that being able to have a very, very strong work ethic and discipline and producing relatively good coherent text as part of a larger program was the model scholar throughout the years. And if you look at the scholars that are the most prolific, almost 100 years ago, like somebody like Wundt in psychology, that was one of the most prolific scholars of his time, and one of the most prolific scholars of my time, Richard Posner, they reach this level where they publish approximately 2 pages a day. Now we can do a little bit more. Of course, we have computers. It's much faster But we kind of aim at this. We aim at a level of writing that is able to create a discourse. And we know that the people that are able to maintain it at the top level are very, very few. One in a generation per discipline, or 2 or 3 or 10, but not thousands and thousands of bots that are able to produce work like this. But that's the world in which we are entering now, in which the machines are basically able to produce the same quality of work at a quantity that we are not able to come to terms with, and of course without all the qualities that would make him into a unique great man or great woman that are leading the generation intellectually. That's the situation in which we are right now. The question that I'm asking myself now is, what should we do next? And by we, I mean somebody, for example, like me, somebody that already has a position. I have tenure. I could just, relax, sit back and enjoy the revolution without doing anything. Or I can try to take part in it and take an active part in trying to determine how the world would look like. And I decide to get involved, to not say, okay, this question doesn't concern me, I'm too young to do that. But at the same time, I'm not in a position where I'm, desperately looking for a job when I have to just do everything that would give me momentary relief and keep me going, preventing me from having a hole in my CV that would prevent me later from getting a job. So I can try to structure my next 3 decades of activity in light of what we see now happening, unfolding in front of us. And I want to share with you something that guides me as I do that. In Israel, we have a very smart man. His family name is Harlap, and he has a very successful business for cars. He was trained as a philosopher, and then decided to join a family business and made it into an empire that is worth billions. He gave once an interview in which he explained his philosophy to business. And this is something that is very inspiring for me. The philosophy of business that he presents says something like that. He says, when I started, which already several decades ago, getting into the car business, I knew 3 things. Within the next 3 years, 3 things are going to happen. Within the next 50 years, 3 things are going to happen. One is we are going to shift to autonomous cars. Obviously, a huge saving of time, reducing accidents. Technology is probably now already there, but when he started, it was not there yet. But he knew that something like this will happen over the next 50 years. Second thing, we're going to switch to electric cars or different fuel instead of gas or diesel. And 3, we're going to probably shift to a model where not so many people have their own private car, because we will have something like Uber that would be very, very, very efficient, and it would just not make any sense anymore to buy a car for most people, not for everybody, but for a lot of people. So I knew all these things, and now I could just say I would just despair and say I have a dying business, or I could try to say I will try to initiate this revolution and go and make the next Tesla. But I'm not able to do both of these things if I want to make money now. So what I should do, he said, is try to look for things that bridge the present and the future. He says, from my perspective, I know that we have an industry that is more than 100 years old, and there are a lot of companies that existed for about 100 years and have been profitable every single year for all of these 100 years. With all the technology that changes and the world wars and everything, they have always been profitable. So I have a lot to learn from them, and I can try to bridge their knowledge and the future that is going to come later. So I thought that is a great model for a lot of things in life, by the way, not just AI, but just to try to say we don't know exactly how the future is going to look like, but there is a lot of information stored in the institutions of the past, and we need to learn from them. We need to be able to bridge the past and the future in an intelligent way. And when you look at universities, we are talking about institutions that existed since the 1200, I think, is Bologna and the beginning of universities. And then they just prosper continuously all over Europe and later all over the world for hundreds and hundreds of years. And they survive the Black Death and the Renaissance and the Reformation and the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars and World Wars and communism. And all these times they are working, and there are people that are working there. Again, their salaries, they are publishing. They are doing that. Okay, so we trying to turn our backs on that would be idiotic, especially because we don't know what's coming next. We need to try to take this past and connect it to the future. Now, the difficulty of doing that is that, when Charlap was speaking about the car industry, the changes were much slower, and he could use his knowledge to adjust to them accordingly. So one of the businesses that he earned a lot of money for was a little startup called Mirabilis, that basically gives you alert as you drive. So it's a brilliant idea. Everybody that drives knows. I don't drive, by the way, but I don't have a driving license. But people that have a driving license probably know that it's important to get these alerts that help them, and they would rather get these alerts than get nothing, or hand on completely the car to a robot unless they're completely trusted. So having something in the middle is great, but the issue is it could develop the technology over quite a few years and integrate it over quite a few years. And here I am telling you that 6 months ago or a year ago, the best tools of AI that existed were maybe as good as a bad student, or a little bit more. And now the tools that are available to me with the proper prompting could surpass the best professors. This change happened over a matter of months. And it just seems to be accelerating. So I don't know how I can, develop a good strategy that would bridge the past and the future, when the future is just around the corner and is so difficult to predict, and is so different from the past. So here's what I think. I'm trying to deal with what I have. And I put 3 principles that I want to preserve. First of all, if I have a competence, I don't want to lose it. Okay, I think it's a very bad idea to lose abilities that you have because the machines do them better, because you may need them later on in a different way. So for example, if the capacity to think is not important to you right now because papers are not appreciated, because AI can write papers very, very fast, you may still need the ability to think deeply about the problem if you go for a live debate. It can be a lecture, it can be any form of panel that you go to. So you still need this tool. So you want to try to preserve it. It's a very, very bad idea to lose tools, and I can tell you that we lose tools very, very, very fast. Remember, just to take a simple example, when I was a child, the first day of school, you go to the people that you want to be your friends. They would tell you their phone numbers, and I would just remember them by heart. And I sometimes never even wrote them down. And I remembered like this many, many numbers. And my father, who was in business, remembered hundreds of numbers. And now we just don't need this capacity because we can usually write on the phone very easily. So if we had to do it on the spot, so if you had now to go to 10 different people, remember their phone numbers and just keep them in your head, most chances you will not be able to do it. So that's what I'm saying. If you think that you don't need to write anymore to get promoted, but you do write very well, it would be really, really dumb not to keep the capacity to write well, because you may need it later on. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. So that's the first principle. Keep your competences that you already have as much as possible. Okay? Things change. I'm also writing less now and spending more time making these videos and talking to ChatGPT, but I still want to be able to do everything that I was able to do, especially the core competences. Second principle, you want to play with a recent technology all the time and call it playing. So I mean, just try to see what is out there. I have a video here on the channel that tries to explain that the tool that we need the most is the ability to go into another set of powerlifting. It's a squat, it's a deadlift, it's a bench press. We don't need so much stamina. We just need the courage to get into a set that we don't know what it's going to lead to. That can be very, very painful, that can be a failure, but we need to try it. And that's something that I try to tell myself every time. Every time I'm going around in the metro and I'm thinking about a certain thing, what I would ask ChatGPT, the first thing I do when I come home, I ask it. I don't try to overthink it. I try to ask, I try to experiment, I try to check different tools, make videos, make pictures, talk to the ChatGPT in the chat, use text in different languages as much as you can, just to try to experiment it as a play. And the third principle, which is the hardest ones to implement, I want you to use a hybrid version of your core competences and the most recent tools and try to do something meaningful with it. And that's the hardest thing to do, because combining your own abilities and your own work habits with a new technology is very hard. I admit that I was not able to do it myself. All the papers that I have published or that I've submitted for publication, or even ones that I kind of in the process, have been done in a traditional way. I mean, I use Grammarly to check the grammar, but I'm not adding ChatGPT and things like this. And I think this has to change. I mean, I have to be able to use this technology in things that are important for me. For example, now I put thumbnails that involve ChatGPT created pictures. So I use something that is important for me, that maybe can help me, and implements a combination of my core competences and the habit technology. And in this way, you can try to bridge the past and the future. Again, I have to state this is a very, very hard thing because the future is so close. So the changes are happening so quickly that it's very, very difficult to make a plan and slowly execute it in a way that is reasonable and grounded in a certain rationale. So that's what I think you should do as a work plan. Now, if you try to think about it from the perspective of academia generally and where is it going, I will start again by iterating that I don't think that academia would die in a day, not just because of what we saw in history, because what's happening now is unprecedented in history, but because academia has immense resources that I think are still important. The ability to network people, the ability to channel knowledge in a certain way that can work very well, and a lot of other assets, by the way, a lot of money, a lot of real estate, a lot of tools to influence politics and other things. So it's something that is still needed, and in fact maybe even needed more. You know, if people will have more time and more passion to study and more tools to study on their own, we would also like the possibilities that academia provides. I'm not sure exactly if it would be always a beneficial thing, but that's really not something I can do anything about. What I can try to do is try to project how academia would look like in a situation in which publications are not anymore the main metric for success and the main tool for promotion. And one of the things that I was thinking about is that maybe we can start to think more of academics like athletes. So instead of saying they're able to produce something that helps humanity in one form or another, we would say, okay, these are people that have incredible skills, and these skills are inspiring for us. I want to say at first that maybe we are not that far away from the situation now, to tell the truth. I mean, it may be all a myth that we try to think that a lot of work that we do in academia is immediately affecting society in a positive way. The truth of the matter is that we are a group of people that have skills and a special training that enjoy to, preserve our special amusement park in which we are training our minds and helping students. So the transition will not be that great, but it will definitely be a difficult move on many levels. First of all, psychologically, even if what I produce is useless, I remember that especially when I was a beginner, how much motivation it gave me, that I thought that it would change the world for the better. I was really, really a believer in that. And this made me work very, very hard, and it made me be very happy with what I was doing. And that's something that I think may go away. And what will come instead? Okay, so look, for example, as you know, I like powerlifting, and the entire powerlifting world was waiting to see if the powerlifter Thor, Hafthor Bjornsson, would be able to lift 501 kilograms. In 2016, Eddie Hall lifted 500 kilograms in incredible lift. This was really a history in the making, and Thor tried to do that in his gym, lift 501, and succeeded. There's a video of that. But there's a lot of questions that are raised about it. Is it legitimate or not? So he was trying to do it in front of an audience in real competition conditions, and he didn't manage to do that. There are probably many, many thousands of people that watched that and were inspired by this case. And that's actually a sport that is not as popular as many others, of course, not athletics or anything close to basketball or football. And what we see there is basically people that are doing something that is completely senseless, because, I mean, yes, maybe there's one person in the world, if at all, that today can lift half a ton, but any forklift can do that very easily. So what's the big deal? Why do we even care about that? And the reason is that we think of this as something that is inspired for us emotionally, and if we train in a way that is similar to this athlete, we'll become more healthy and happy, and so on and so on. And that's something that I think that we may be able to transition into the world of the spirit, when we will basically say something like, yeah, we know that ChatGPT can write a better paper than the best professors in the world, but they are still much better trained and much smarter than almost any other individual, and somehow we may enjoy and profit from watching them and emulating them. So this may be something that we can learn from. And the question is, how do we do that? I think that you can see a greater transition to lectures, for example. So this tradition of the Collège de France, where you have somebody working on research and then basically presenting it to a large audience, and then also this is recorded now so everybody can follow it. So even if somebody can use ChatGPT to write the notes, they would probably not be able to present it with the same conviction or understanding if they are not at least involved in the process. So we will see things like this, or real debates, and shifting to the media and having things like YouTube channels, etc., and physical panels, and have that more and more and more. Now, all these things we have infrastructure to do that. So, I mean, conferences have been done for at least the last 100 years on a very large scale. People have been traveling the ocean to do that. So that's definitely something that is doable, and maybe we will shift towards this direction. Maybe also we will start to care more about teaching, which is, I think, a blessing. because this will be really our direct interaction with the world, instead of writing papers that are, at least in theory, indirectly affecting society. So this is what I think is going to happen in one way or another. Academics will become much more like athletes, and then we will see what this will mean. I mean, will it mean that there will be very, very few that will be known and respected, like brand names, kind of Messi and Ronaldo of a time, and the others would be, forced into jobs that will be less successful, or actually this will be a dynamic of continuous dialogue in which a larger chunk of the people that are in academia will be able to get what they need to get. So incentive to work, social recognition, possibilities for improvement, and so on. We will see how this develops. I don't have more to say on the topic right now. I just want to tell you a story that I think is relevant. I started law school when I was 16, which was very, very young, especially in Israel, where students usually come after the army when they are 22, 23, 24, 25. And the way I studied was very much focused on doctrinal law, with professors that wrote textbooks to be cited by the Israeli Supreme Court. They barely knew English. Few of them published in American or international reviews, and if they did, it was a very minor part of their career. They were not interdisciplinary at all. They never thought about studying economics, sociology, philosophy, history, psychology. It was very, very far from them. And that's the world that I grew into. And I could see that these were the people that won the awards, that became deans, that were respected in the faculty. When I started my MA, which I started immediately after my LLB, I could already sense that there were something going to change. There were many indications of that. The new hires were people that were very different, that were much more interdisciplinary. They started to get more power in the faculty. A lot of things were changing. But I didn't know where things were going. Fortunately, I was asked to show the list of courses that I chose for my MA or LLM to a professor in the faculty. And this professor, her name was Deora Bielski, looked at the list of courses that I proposed, which were all in the traditional format. So, doctrinal law regarding very specific topics. So, I don't know, how to deal with private companies under administrative law. Whole course on this. And she looked at this and she said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a professor in public law. And she said, that's not going to work. And immediately, right there, something clicked in my head. And I said, okay, let me come to you with a new list. And I went out of the room, and within a matter of half an hour, I transformed the list completely. And I took courses in decision theory, in history, in philosophy, and in interdisciplinary courses. And this was completely changing my focus. There could be a situation in which I or some of my listeners would face a situation like this in the nearby future. Because the revolution is happening, it's going to be much bigger than the revolution that happened in Israel from doctrinal law to disciplinary law. It's going to be much, much, much bigger. But the interesting thing is that just like I got this insight from Professor Bielski, I could potentially get these insights from quite a few people in my faculty. And if I would go to Yale or to Harvard, I'm sure that they would direct me in this direction very, very easily, without a doubt. So there were thousands of smart people that could articulate where academia worldwide is going, thousands of them. I have yet to meet one person who can give me even a hint of where are we transitioning to. So there's going to be a huge revolution. but nobody knows where it's going to stabilize. Which means that you need to stay put, be brave. You may be required to make a very, very strong transition, and try to think continuously and deeply about the changes that are happening, so that when the change happens, you'll be in the best possible situation. Thank you very much. This is all for today. As always, if you like the video, please like it. I would be very much appreciate if you subscribe to my channel or share the video. And especially on this topic, I would very much appreciate your comments. So please write me your comments here on YouTube or to my email. Thank you very much, and until next time, keep learning.